All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Because we care for one another's safety, our congregation is gathering online during this long season of coronavirus pandemic. Nevertheless, through the gifts of technology, we continue to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love. Arise, O souls, Good morning, and welcome to this virtual gathering of the All Souls Unitarian Universalist community of Kansas City on May 23rd, 2021. We come together here to find encouragement in a world that is too often tragic and violent, unfair and exhausting. We are surrounded by so many challenges: greed, selfishness, and irresponsibility among people with power, the cruelties of war, poverty, and injustice that grind down the lives we share, the ravages of disease and threat of climate crisis that eat away our peace of mind, the personal heartaches of loss and disappointment that come to us all. But the faith that calls us together teaches us not to give up, not to yield to despair. For all around us, too, there is beauty and goodwill, generosity and compassion, new truth discovered, and old injuries healed. The intricate interdependence of life renewing itself in this vibrant spring. In this hour of reflection and reconnection, we would be restored to our best selves and our best lives, so that we might live out of our highest values and our noblest shared hopes, rather than our basest common fears. Just this week, we have seen yet another cruel and arbitrary murder of an unarmed Black man by police, disclosed after years of lies. We have seen destruction and death rise yet again from ancient hatreds and oppressions in ancient lands. We have seen the venal ambition of politicians grasping for power through corruption, divisive rhetoric, and lies. It can lead you to doubt that the truth will make us free, to wonder if there will ever really be peace on earth, to question the inherent worth and dignity of some people. We are here not because we are free of such doubts, but rather because we confront them at every turn, and because we would answer them not with bravado or denial, but with clarity of purpose and generosity of spirit. We are here to share and nourish that part of ourselves which knows that greatness and happiness both are found in the service of something larger and more enduring than our own comforts. We are here to praise the wonders of creation, to reconnect with the sustenance of community and heritage, to summon the witness of conscience against futility and indifference. There is much that we might yet do of good in the world. However spent our energies, we have not yet exhausted the possibilities, nor reached the end of our care for one another. Come, dearly beloved, let us be renewed in spirit for the journey that lies before us. We kindle this chalice flame today as before, here as in communities across the nation and around the globe. May its light remind us that we are not alone. In these days of separation, we remain part of a larger whole. Nor is our local community isolated, for we are part of a still larger movement, and our light of freedom, reason, and interconnection is lifted up throughout the generations to illuminate the world. If you wish, please share in the chat where your light is kindled this morning. Now let's join together in speaking once again our covenant promises to this community. Together we affirm, goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Unitarian minister and social reformer William Channing Gannett wrote our first hymn, which is a celebration of the timeless metaphor of optimism and transcendence that each sunrise brings to open minds. Would you sing with us? The morning hangs a signal upon the mountain crest, while all the sleeping valleys in silent darkness rest. From peak to peak it flashes,
When I was a child, I liked memorizing poetry and parts of plays. I was pretty good at memorizing. It just came naturally to me. I was no good at singing, could not carry a tune in a bucket, but I could keep words in my head. Different people have different talents. Some people like memorizing things. Well, 100 years ago, when children went to Sunday school, that is pretty much all they did. They were assigned to memorize sayings from the Bible and Bible stories. Most of the grown-ups weren't very worried about whether those children understood the words they were reciting. They believed that later, after the children had gotten older, they would start to understand. In the meantime, they were learning about religion by memorizing what the Bible said. Now, I suspect I might have been good at that project, but most kids did not enjoy it all that much. They were reciting a lot of old-fashioned sounding words that didn't make any sense to them, and learning some very improbable stories about miracles that didn't sound like anything that really happened in their real lives. It was just one more annoying thing that grown-ups made them do. One Sunday school teacher agreed with them. Her name was Sophia Faz. She thought that memorizing Bible verses didn't actually teach children about what religion is. Sophia Faz thought that the Bible might have some interesting answers to religious questions, but she thought that you have to start with the questions, not the answers, if you are actually going to learn anything important. She also observed that the children she knew personally, her own children and the children in her Sunday school classes, came pre-equipped with lots of questions. They were curious about many things, pretty much everything, actually. They wondered about the world around them, about the skies and the stars, about how the earth began, and what made something be alive or dead. They wondered about the people around them, and how they could be mean or kind, and what made a choice right or wrong. They wondered about what made them feel happy inside, and what made them sad, and what it meant to be a good person. Sophia Faz thought that those were all great questions. In fact, she thought those were exactly the kinds of questions that religion is supposed to help us answer, or at least think about carefully. She believed that if children were asking those questions, they were already learning about religion, and the grown-ups who wanted to help them learn should be trying to encourage their questions, not making them memorize Bible verses they didn't understand. Sophia Faz became a revolutionary figure in religious education in the early 20th century among liberal churches like Unitarians and Universalists. She and a small group of other women who agreed with her designed several series of curriculum materials for Sunday schools that focused on children's own experiences of wonder in nature and of storytelling as a way to think about solving problems and imagining how other people might feel. Sophia Faz thought that every child had their own natural spiritual ideas and questions, and that the church community's job was to help each of them explore those ideas and learn about other people and traditions that shared them, so that children would know that they were not alone or weird because they wondered about such things. She also thought that if children were taught to be afraid of God, or were told that they were better than other people who believed differently, they might grow up to be unhappy and mean. Part of the reason for Sunday school, she figured, was to try to keep that from happening. One time, Sophia Faz wrote down some of her thoughts about the difference between religious ideas that she found helpful and other religious ideas that seemed not really good for people. She wanted to describe how parents and teachers could help children grow up to be honest and curious and caring towards others because of their religious values. We remember what she said because her words remind us of what we want to teach our children today and how we want our faith to shape our own lives. Let's read her thoughts out loud, together with Marli Murphy and Barbara Griggs, and be grateful for the pioneering work of our teacher, Sophia Faz.
It Matters What We Believe by Sophia Faz, who helped revolutionize Unitarian religious education. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage inclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged. Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies.
Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities. Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness.
Some beliefs are divisive, separating saved from unsaved, friends from enemies. Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern.
Some beliefs are like blinders shutting off the power to choose one's own direction. Other beliefs are like gateways opening wide vistas for exploration.
Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness. Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal growth.
Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, powerless in a changing world. Other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the energy of new life.
Good morning, All Souls. Before I get to the business at hand, I wanted to introduce to you the 21-22 Board of Trustees. They have agreed to let myself serve as president again, so I will be your board president again this year.
And I'm Russ Feldhausen. I will be board vice president this year.
Bonnie Postleway, I'll be your secretary.
Alex Westerfeld, treasurer.
Richard Thompson, assistant treasurer.
Morris Metter, member at large.
Sue Trowbridge, at large.
Scott England, at large.
Romalee Taunton, at large.
David Robinson, at large.
Tracy Van Quaidem, member at large.
I'm Kendyl Gibbons. I'm the senior minister and I'm part of the staff team that routinely attends board meetings.
I'm Reverend Judith Cady, the Minister of Religious Education for Children and Youth, and I'm a member of the staff that regularly attends board meetings.
Thank you. And not here this evening is Cheryl Westra, who is also an at-large member. And also not here this evening is Anthony Edwards, our music director and worship arts coordinator. And now to the business at hand. Your one-time contributions, and even more so, your pledge to make a regular contribution throughout the year, show your support to All Souls and all that it does to support our members, friends, and the greater community. When the board has a good idea of what we can expect throughout the year, and that it is enough to support our budget, we can then focus on other board business, like updating our governing documents to be gender inclusive, finding ways to be together again, safely asking the right questions about the real estate proposals so you can be confident you have all the information if and when it is time to vote, and many more issues like these that come our way throughout the year. These are the areas the board would prefer to focus our energies on. These are the things that drew us to board work. To support this focus and all the other things that our church does, please click on the link in chat or on the homepage to give today and or to make a pledge of ongoing support to All Souls, the board, and all that we can accomplish together.
Let's say together the words of dedication for our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change toward a just and compassionate society.
On January 6th, along with the rest of the country, I followed the news of the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol and the prominence of Confederate flags, nooses, and other symbols of the far right. Like many others, I took note of the so-called Q-Anon shaman, 33-year-old Jake Angeli, born Jacob Anthony Chansley of Arizona. He was bare-chested and covered in Nordic tattoos, at least one of which, the Valnot, is a Norse symbol sometimes associated with white supremacy. But he was also, infamously, wearing a headdress fashioned from buffalo horns and coyote skin, elements associated with the American West that seemed intended to telegraph a pagan spirituality. I've been around a lot of white people who have adopted a mishmash of pagan and indigenous signifiers as a New Age aesthetic. It's a cringeworthy and offensive display of appropriation that I don't endorse. But it's common in that world.
An independent researcher on alternative spirituality, defined as religious beliefs outside conventional groups, Charlotte Ward began noticing a hybrid of conspiracy theory beliefs and New Age culture cropping up online in 2009. So in 2011, she co-wrote an academic paper titled The Emergence of Conspirituality with a qualitative social scientist, David Voice. In it, they noted patterns and connections emphasized in both conspiracy culture and alternative spiritual beliefs, namely, nothing is as it seems, and nothing is an accident. They wrote, these worldviews make both public and personal life seem less subject to random forces, and therein lies the appeal. Ward and Voice defined conspirituality as a politico-spiritual philosophy based on two core convictions. The first, a secret group covertly controls the political and social order, or is trying to. And second, humanity is undergoing a paradigm shift in consciousness. Well, the first conviction is at the heart of conspiracy theories, and the other is rooted in New Age beliefs. Conspirituality proponents believe the best way to deal with the threat of a totalitarian New World Order is to act in accordance with this awakened new paradigm worldview. In this, our cultural moment, when baseless claims about both a rigged election and the dangers of vaccines have hit Americans almost simultaneously, conspirituality is no longer just an idea in a decade-old academic paper or floating around the internet. It's become our shared reality.
Now give hearts onward, habit brave intent, hammer the golden day until it lies, a glimmering plate to heap with memory. Salute arriving moments with your eyes. We live, we are elected now by time. Few out of many the sun upon the earth. Then break the silence with a voice of praise before we fall asleep, before we die. Press mind and body hard against this world. Open the door that opens toward the sky.
Like rivers of fire, people described them, and I dare say they were very beautiful and impressive. Starting in the late 1920s and continuing throughout Hitler's rise to power in Germany during the 1930s and even later, the Nazi Party staged massive rallies in various cities, especially Nuremberg in Bavaria, where large numbers of SS troops paraded carrying lighted torches. To our own neon-jaded eyes, they might not appear all that remarkable, but the audiences of the day found it breathtaking. In an event with no jumbotrons to bring everyone up close to the action, that choreography of evening torchlight was visible to the whole crowd, whether close up or far in the back, like rivers of fire. I have no doubt that it felt inspirational and uplifting and beautiful, like being swept up together into a larger struggle for something right and good. Reflecting on these rallies in her recent bestseller, Caste, author Isabel Wilkerson writes this: every last one of us would now say to ourselves, I would never have attended such an event. I would never have attended a lynching. And yet tens of thousands of everyday humans did just that in the lifetime of the oldest among us in Germany and in the American South. This bears witness to an uncomfortable truth, she continues, that evil is not one person, but can be easily activated in more people than we would like to believe when the right conditions congeal. It is much harder to look into the darkness in the hearts of ordinary people with unquiet minds, needing someone to feel better than, whose cheers and votes allow despots anywhere in the world to rise to power in the first place. It is harder to focus on the danger of the common will, the weakness of the human immune system, the ease with which toxins can infect succeeding generations. Here is something I understand about immune systems and pharmacology. It is simplistic, but I'm a theologian, not a biologist, so we are just in it for the sake of the analogy. Bear with me. Certain cells have specific receptors for certain other cells or chemicals that they need in order to do their work in the body. Toxic substances or viruses trick those cells by mimicking the stuff they are looking for and bonding with them, and then forcing them to do something else. We use this to our own advantage, for instance, when science learns how to block pain receptors so that we can mitigate suffering from injuries. Now here's the analogy. I want to suggest that in our mental processes of making sense of the world, we have what I would call spiritual receptors that are designed to bond with things that give us a sense of purpose and identity and connection. These ideas and experiences serve to create a feeling of safe and comforting coherence despite the randomness of life, and also reinforce the idea that we are each special and uniquely powerful to overcome obstacles to our survival. Because we are a genetically social species, these spiritual receptors are also designed to bond us with a group so that its thriving becomes essentially equivalent to, or indeed more important than, our own as an individual. Without the work of these receptors, all that we think of as making us human and humane would vanish. Love, compassion, generosity, loyalty, mercy, justice, hope, the impulse to share our creativity and vision for the future, nurturing, learning, patience, kindness, the cherishing of memory, and the capacity for covenant. We would be an entirely different sort of creature collectively if those spiritual receptors were not part of our standard human equipment. However, in much the same ways that our brain cells are designed to bond with endorphins and dopamine to make us feel happy, but can be tricked by addictive drugs like heroin and cocaine, so our spiritual receptors can also bond with toxic material from the environment to produce destructive results, not only in individuals, but in groups. In fact, I submit that those spiritual receptors are not passive. They do not just float around randomly waiting to bump into something to bond with. They are actively searching for it, and they will grab onto whatever is handy or comes along first. If an indifferent government-sponsored Protestant Christianity doesn't do it for you, the rivers of fire will get your attention, and the Nazi promise of pride and victory, of racial purity and belonging to a chosen superior group struggling to overcome its evil adversaries and affirm its historic destiny, will click into place like the last piece of a jigsaw puzzle. So will learning that you are the despised heir of a noble lost cause and once gloriously dominant culture, whose ancestors bequeathed the gracious and ordered gentility in which subservience was both inborn and enforced, a society whose benefits you have been maliciously deprived of by hostile, inferior powers, a society that requires a renewed assertion of united superiority by those who share your elevated heritage. The Ku Klux Klan entered into its era of greatest influence around the same time that the Nazi rallies were inflaming Germany. They had their own rivers of fire across the Midwest and southern USA, hooded torchlight parades, and it was only with that resurgence in the 20s and 30s that the KKK first adopted cross burning as a focal symbolic action. Or, as Charlotte Ward and David Voss suggest, the new spirituality of conspiracy, which they have dubbed conspirituality, will also lock into those same psychological receptors. It includes the belief that you have been admitted into a small, specially chosen and enlightened community to understand the truth about all the world's current dysfunctions and the soon-to-happen transformations that will bring about the downfall of evil forces and the restoration of moral order, the revelation of definitive answers to all current ambiguities and confusions, and not least of all, the dominance of your uniquely perceptive group. This proposition reminds me of nothing so much as the early decades of emergent Christianity, which suggests to me that we might do well not to underestimate the eventual appeal of something like Q-Anon. The point is that all of these violent political fantasies have a quasi-religious aspect, and their capacity to lock into our spiritual receptors means that they are not easily rejected by any immune system that depends exclusively on rationality. One proposed solution to this dilemma, dating back at least to the Enlightenment philosophes, is expressed in the claim that people will never be free until the last king is strangled with the entrails of the last priest. Diderot, to whom this sentiment is often misattributed, did not say this exactly, but secularists, like he was, often have advocated for the wholesale elimination of both government and religion on the grounds that both are inherently irrational and oppressive. The trouble is that our human proclivity for rivers of fire is itself not rational. Some things appeal to us from a different direction than reason, and when we try to function as if that were not true, it always ends badly. This is not an argument against the application of reason, merely a recognition of its limitations to measure the full extent of human good. We are not designed to tolerate the starvation of our spiritual receptors. They will seize upon the twisted and the toxic, the oppressive and the ultimately violent, if we try to deny them sustenance altogether. And like our other appetites, they will prefer the over-sugared, over-salted, artificially flavored stream of readily available junk food if we make no other provision for them. As Emerson wrote during the age of transcendentalism, a person will worship something, have no doubt about that. We may think our tribute is paid in secret in the dark recesses of our hearts, but it will come out. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping, we are becoming. Bad religion, it seems to me, drives out no religion. The first generation may subsist on the fleshless skeleton of their ancestors' rejected faith, but the next will be filled with an unnamed craving that leaves them prey to any fanaticism that finds them. They will be swept away on the rivers of fire because they have no firmer foundation, and reason will not save them. Which is, I submit, the answer for those blithely secular friends who question with some incredulity why someone as smart as you would engage in that peculiar anachronism of going to church. Because I don't want to find myself consuming spiritual junk food like Q-Anon is all the answer you need. Or because it behooves us to be careful what we worship, for what we are worshiping we are becoming, if you prefer the literary allusion. This is why we are here, doing this odd, rational, ritual, hybrid community thing, to scratch that itch of our spiritual receptors for meaning, connection, and liminality, hang tight, I'll come back to that one, and to feed our souls something so satisfying and nourishing that when the rivers of fire come flowing with their promise of sweet violence in our direction, we will know them for the trap they are. Okay, liminality. The word originates from the Latin for threshold, and it was first used by anthropologists to describe the status of a person undergoing a rite of passage, such as coming of age or marriage, who has left a previous identity behind, but has not yet fully attained the new identity. A young man, for instance, who has left the care of his mother and the community of women, but has not yet been assigned a name or guardian deity, or been taught the secret of an adult man's role. A bride-to-be who is no longer available for courting, but does not yet have the status of a wife. Someone dying, but not yet an ancestor. People in these positions are often considered both holy and dangerous, a risk to themselves and those around them. They are set apart from the ordinary life of the community. Students of ritual came to realize that we all have moments of liminality at times, when we feel ourselves to be elevated from normal routines, particularly in touch with ultimate value, enlightened, aware of our purpose and of being blessed. Uplifted, we might say, or inspired. Sometimes beauty does it, sometimes grief, sometimes gratitude. It is a temporarily elevated state of mind that does not last, but most of us have experienced it at least a few times. And that river of fire mob high can also induce it, which is why the church, if it functions properly, is the safest place for it. The church, if it functions properly, is the safest space for liminality and indeed for all that feeds our spiritual receptors, because it places these hungers in the service of the ideals that we as human beings do not subsume or control. Much like the safest place for our sexuality is within a committed relationship of mutual responsibility and care, where our impulses are restrained by the bonds of covenant, so the safest place for our impulses toward ultimacy is a covenant community of memory and promise that transcends our own generation and refuses to forget either the errors of our human past or the possibilities of our collective future. If we are going to lose our separate identity and accountability in the sweep of passionate community, and I don't think we have a choice about it, that is going to happen to us sometimes, it had best be in the context of a commitment that remembers and understands the dangers of that experience, how vulnerable it makes us to losing touch with the values we always thought we believed in and the hopes we cherished for the world that might yet be. These are the fresh vegetables of our spiritual diet, the reminders of how small we are, how little we know, how much suffering we can refuse to see, and how much damage we can do. I am convinced that if those truths are prepared and served with humility and grace, we can develop a more sophisticated palate and learn to prefer them to syrupy sentimentality or deep-fried arrogance. One thing I know for sure is that you can't fake it. There is a place for spiritual practice that is just that, practice. What W.H. Auden once called practicing the scales of rejoicing. But in the end, if an idea or a moment does not lock into your spiritual receptors, you can't force liminality. Once you really see that that river of fire consists of patio tiki torches from Walmart, a certain spell is broken, unless you choose to keep believing. That moment of choice is what we are all about here in this free religious community. We buy 90% rubbing alcohol to fuel the chalice at CVS like any other shopper because the 90% burns better. I know you didn't think it was made by sacred elves in the enchanted forest. You can know that, and your rational mind can still say, it's okay. You can trust this. I have already checked it out. Go ahead and let this flame be the warmth of community and the light of truth and the fire of commitment. There's no poison in it. It won't hurt you or anyone else. Let it lock into those receptors and feed your spirit. And I hope when the river of Nazi fire or the KKK marches down your street, that a voice inside you is saying, no way. Danger, Will Robinson, there is hatred here and toxic ego and the invitation to cruelty. It will poison your soul and people will be harmed. See the silliness of the tiki torches. See the pomp and vanity of it all. Call it idolatry and have no part of it. I hope with all my heart that a voice is saying that inside your head. And if it's my voice, I'm okay with that too. Because this is the only way I know to answer Isabel Wilkerson's question of what could make any of us be the one who didn't stand in the crowd waving a swastika or drive out to the edge of the woods to watch the lynching. Because our spirits were fed on health and hope and truth and justice and reason, and so we knew better. And then maybe if we are also fed on courage and mercy and human kinship and compassion, we become the ones who lift up our voices to stop it, to say the no way out loud, and bear costly witness to the world that we know with deep certainty is and always has been and always will be possible. That is what church is for. That is why we are here, why we come week by week to do this otherwise inexplicable thing. That is why I take what I offer you each Sunday that I stand in this space, whether physical or virtual, with utter seriousness. Because what we are consuming together here must nurture and immunize us against those rivers of fire that will always be flowing somewhere, gathering benighted souls into their glittering current and carrying them along to doom. Here, together, we learn the wisdom and love that nourish a liminality by which our spirits expand into a growing light, increase in moral stature, and give us more abundant joy in the good of this world. Perhaps our individual and collective witness even becomes a landmark for others who discover from our example the larger possibilities of their own lives, and are made more wary of the rivers of fire when they come. Not because we have the answers, heaven knows, but because we have the humility to cherish the questions and live into them, honoring the integrity of both reason and hunger in our humanity. Music is one of those realities of human experience that touch the inner springs of our longing where reason cannot reach. Songs of aspiration connect with our spiritual receptors to inspire and heal and connect. Let us sing what is true for us and real, but for the sake of all that is whole and holy, let us sing.
And we believe in life and
life's very brief. The death of one among us fills us all with pain and grief. But as we live, so shall we die, and when our lives are done, the memories we shared with friends, they will linger on and on. And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow. We have the gift to believe that peace within our living is an answer. We seek in music answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and lasting peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a joy being together. And in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see, needed to question truly is an answer.
Be careful what you worship. That which dominates your imagination and your thoughts will determine your life and your character. Let us not starve our spirits, but nurture them in the greatest good we can envision. For what we are worshiping, that we are becoming.
Be ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual words of love.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until the time shall come when we will be together again. Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope that you have found comfort and inspiration in this time together. We will now gather for a time of informal conversation and fellowship on our Community Connection Zoom room. You can find that link on our website homepage or in the chat. Don't forget to order your upcoming Sunday Plus meal for June 20th and update your pledge contribution for the new fiscal year. Also, if you are considering attending all or part of our virtual UUA General Assembly at the end of June, now is the time to register and let the board know of your interest if you would like to represent All Souls as a formal delegate. I hope you will plan to be with us next week when we will observe the centennial anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre and consider the role of prominent Unitarians in that event. Until then, please do whatever you can to help your friends and family get vaccinated. Take care, stay safe, and be well this week.